Hey guys, it's Jonathan McCormack. I'm an attachment specialist in New York, and I want to talk about um, the divided self. R.D. Lang wrote a famous book on this, and this is uh, part of the attachment issues people have, more on the disorganized and avoidant, fearful avoidant. But it's this contradiction that they forever long for a connection that ultimately they perceive as a threat. Um, you know, there used to be an old legend that on the world at any one time, there were 36 righteous people. The world was so filled with evil and suffering, and is, that God had chosen 36 righteous people to take all the excess suffering, and these people would preserve the earth from being utterly destroyed by suffering. 36. I thought that was a cool idea. So I actually went and I did an exhibit. I drew them. I picked up 36 people I thought in history could represent these poor, anguished souls. People you would assume: Kafka, John Berryman, the cursed poets, Baudelaire. And one of them was Edvard Munch. And Munch. Munch's the one who painted the Scream. And if you read about him, he is really avoidant, really fearful avoidant. He is very disorganized. He's the poster child for this. And you can really get into his head. It was said that Edvard Munch, that he kind of lacked the basic quality of being, he wasn't able to attach to other people. He had a terrible fear of intimacy, and it really tormented him his whole life. Actually, I could probably show you some paintings by him. What would I? Oh, screen share. There we go. How can you say? There we go. Yeah, so he did the Scream. This is famous. And you see him, and it's this anxiety. He's completely apart from everyone, and it's pure panic and existential dread. But he did quite a few. This one, the vampire. And if you look at this, it's almost like a mother figure as a vampire, draining the blood and life energy. He originally titled this Love and Pain. But for an avoidant, when someone's trying to get close to them, they feel like they're losing their energy. They feel like their energy is being sucked out. They feel exhausted and drained, and you are coming in their boundaries. And so it's a rather dark experience for them. This one of my favorites, called the Madonna. The Madonna, like Mother Mary, Madonna, but obviously, if you see here, that's not her. But he named this Madonna, and you kind of just see the woman, inaccessible, powerful, seductive, and then that little fetus on the bottom. That poor guy, not even looking at her, forever disappointed. And these are sperm. He separated his father's sperm from himself and the mother, as if he's being rejected by him, rejected by her. And in fact, Monk often described himself as feeling very humiliated around women. And you just look at some of the others. Look, her sexually awakening, up, blooming, powerful, and then him just collapsed. And he was terrified of women's sexuality, terrified they would drain him. And you can see that. I tell you though, my favorite painting of his was after he went pretty crazy, after he went to the mental ward. He stopped looking inward at all these horrible things, started looking outward. And when he got out of the mental hospital, this is what he painted. He painted a couple different versions of this, but just this hallucinatory sun, this sign of hope after all that darkness. And this is what he was able to do once he got some help and treatment. Yeah, I just like Monk a lot. Um, but I think he illustrates what's going on with the avoidant. Um, the problem is that, people with avoidant problems, they kind of experience themselves as disembodied, like they're floating brains. There's not in their body. Um, and so it's almost like they're not really acting in the world. They're kind of shadowish as far as they experience themselves. And people aren't brains. They aren't brains on a stick. They aren't minds. That's a false self. The body has needs, the body has desires and wants, and to deny that. And deep down, that person knows they're denying it. They know they're presenting a false self to the world. These people kind of become like mental observers, like they're observing their own life. They're not in life. They're observing it, almost like there's a pane of glass between them. That pane of glass is their body because they're not embodied. Um, they're dismissive, impassive, detached. And it's actually said, Winnicott actually said, for these people, it's the world that threatens his being from all sides and from which there's no exit. He said, the world is a prison without bars, a concentration camp without barbed wire. The paranoid people have persecutors. You can tell, like, oh, these people are chasing me or whatever. But he says, the person, this is what Lang says, or Dean Lang now, the person I'm describing feels at this phase persecuted by reality itself. The world as it is and other people as they are the dangers. So to avoid it, indeed, it's other people dangers. It's almost like they're rejected by their mother. By the way, their mother could have been wonderful, but just really absent. But that's how it felt as a kid. And once that happens, it's almost like, no, now they're rejected by the world. Now they're rejected by reality itself, by God. And then the self tries to become unembodied, to transcend the world, and to be safe. For me, a lot of avoidance, I don't need anyone. They float above the world's problems because they're not even in the world. So much of them are caught up in pain and broken off. So it's almost like they get the sense like out there is everything. That's where experience is, like life. And inside here is just emptiness. And they can't get out of their head into their bodies. They can't get out of their heads and into life. Yeah. And yet, deep down inside, their self does long for participation in this world. They want to be part of the world. They want to be part of the world. They want a sense of belonging. And yet this longing is felt as a weakness. And if you give into that longing, it calls up dread. The avoidance fear of being engulfed. Their self will just be lost in this world. It's not strong enough to withhold it. So oftentimes these people are so ambivalent in attachment issues that to make a self, you need to make genuine commitments according to your own desire. And these people often don't know their own desire, or if they do, they refuse to make a commitment to it. And so they have a self that simply doesn't feel real. It's this false self. Instead of an individual meeting the world with their self, it's this false self and then real self and world. Both are out there that I can't touch. And so the self, therefore, Lang says, is precluded from having a direct relationship with either real things or real people. People, the world is just seen as more and more unreal, more dead. And love is precluded as well, and dread takes its place. The self, by its very detachment, is precluded from full experiences of realness and aliveness. And this individual is frightened of the world, of any impingement, because this penetration will cause fragmentation and engulfing. He just can never let himself go. Or also to be depleted and exhausted. He has no ontological security. So I talked to one person, and the only time they felt they can let go was when they're like near death, like when they had drank like 3 pints of vodka or something, and like just right before they passed out. Right then, not even the whole time. At that moment, they can relax and feel something. Now, the self never does commit itself to a creative relationship with someone else. So it's usually preoccupied with fantasy, like a whole fantasy life. Avoidance will not have a really rich fantasy life. Um, they don't commit themselves to any real project that involves intimacy, real relational project, right? So they really never have to suffer the agonies of humiliation or failure, you know? I mean, they're just free. They're free in their own fantasy to believe whatever they wish to believe. And indeed, the psychology folk will know that Minowski, he had a concept of autism that was basically split between fantasy and reality. But, as Lang says, the person who does not act in reality and only acts in fantasy has become himself unreal. You have all these plans, all these actions. This is what I would have done back then. This is what I would have done. And this is what I'm going to do, And if that person said this to me, yeah. And if I did get into a relationship, it just becomes more and more unreal. He's just not anchored in the world. The actual world becomes very shrinking and impoverished. One of my favorite poets was one of these tormented folks, was Franz Wright. His father won the Pulitzer for poetry, and he won the Pulitzer for poetry many years later, which is amazing. But he has this kind of feeling that, yeah, it's almost, I heard someone say, for depressives, it's not like the worst thing that could possibly happen might happen or is going to happen. Is going to happen. Oh, because that'd be terrible. No. It's much worse for that. It feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen. You might not even know what that is. The utterly catastrophic thing has already happened. It's already happened. There is no correction. And that's that feeling. That's why I feel stuck, like you're in the abyss and it will never go, because there is no forward. You're imagining it as it's already happened, So Franz Wright, he has a great poem called On the Bus. So I'll read it. On the bus. It's one thing when you're 21, and I was way past 21, with unshaven face half concealed in the collar of some deceased porcelain philanthropist's black cashmere rag of a coat. I knew that I looked like a suicide, returning an overdue book to the library. Almost everyone else did as well. But I found no particular solace in this. At best, the fact awakened some diverting speculations on the comparative benefits of waiting in front of a ditch to be shot alone or in company of others, and whether one would prefer these last hypothetical others to be friends, family, enemies, total or relative strangers. Would you hold hands? Or would you rather, like a good Homo sapiens monster, employ them to cover your genitals? What percentage would lose bowel control? And given time restrictions, and assuming some still had the ability to move, would ostracism result? Anyway, I knew the rules on this bus. No eye contact. The eyes of the terrified terrify. Look like you know what you're doing. Possess ample charge to get there, and don't move your lips when you talk to yourself. The destroyed and sick, the poor, the hungry, the disturbed as strange, the badly dressed as strange even, and that is uncalled for. The degree of one's power to estrange will increase in direct proportion to the depth of need for others. Do not cry. This can only bring about, on the one hand, an instant condition of banishment from the sole available companionship, or, on the other, a near fatal beating. One more disappointment. Just follow this simple instruction if you ever come here. It's easy to remember. Any idiot can do it. Don't cry. The world has abandoned us. And I really like that. I thought that captured exactly what a fearful avoidant is going through. The one solace is the thing that would harm me. So that's the thing that I can never. It'll just be a beating or a disappointment. Um, and also the more you need, it's like a direct proportion between need. It's like the more you need, the more you'll push people away. That's how it feels. He says that's strange, but yeah, the more people who don't need anyone, boom, oh, they'll get someone like that. Yeah, yeah, they'll be the most popular person, get all the guys or girls. But the person who's desperately in need, they will never get what they want. That's just how that's the feeling that he kind of leaves an alcoholic too, and had, I don't know, 65, but still brilliant man. Um, so if this person, if you're in a relationship with an avoidant, the truth is their self is not really in a relationship with you. It's really in a relationship with themselves. Um, this can get really extreme if it turns like schizoid, um, because by that time their self is just completely isolated, and there can be no commitment. There can be no participation of the self in life. Why? Because the world's so anxiety producing. It's like a panic. I've known plenty of people that use drugs or heroin, opiates, alcohol, whatever, because the world is just a panic to them. And for the avoidant, they're always shut down. The next stage is not secure. The next stage is now there's anxiety as I go back into the world, and that can be really disruptive, you know. And so he looks at the world. He's like, well, the only way I could participate in the world is if I go out there. If I go out there, it's going to be panic and dread. You know? For someone like this, life itself is feels like it's at constant risk of being destroyed. Your life will be destroyed by life. So you have to preserve itself, even in all that inner emptiness. So Lang does say that from a desperate longing and yearning for what others have and he lacks, these guys get like a frantic envy. They see all this, and sometimes they can get very resentful and have this commitment, this desire to destroy freshness, richness, and goodness in the world because they don't have that. They don't have that, and then walking around, everyone else gets to be human, not you. You don't get to be a human, and they start hating those people. And you notice a lot of avoidants have that superior attitude. They have that disdain, the contempt. Just no matter what it is, you're like, hey, I just saw someone graduate. Pfft, college. It's a scam. Oh, okay, all right. So and so just got their new license. Oh, I don't believe that's even legitimate. Pfft, doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. And yet their soul is so desolate and arid. It really does yearn to be refreshed. But not just refreshed, it's so isolated and cracked and dry. It really longs to be completely drenched by love, completely suffused by the other. The old saying that the people who don't need anyone are the neediest people at all because they're terrified that their needs are so huge, no human could possibly approach them. That loneliness has been kept dark down inside for decades. Decades. Can you imagine that? Have you ever been very lonely for a couple months? You had like a whole year, and I'm talking real loneliness. Imagine decades going by, not being touched, even not being seen by anyone. Unfortunately, a lot of us can't imagine that. So I was reading R.D. Lang, and he has he talks about this one kind of very avoidant person, and this person saw someone making love, which they never had. This guy, and when he saw that, he just had this tremendous feeling of being oneness with the world and with the flowers and the trees. He had this panic, but first of all, he's like, I have no right to feel that good. because identity is just merged with the world. For people like this, they go so extreme. There's either radical isolation or complete absorption. Well, if that's the choice, and you're terrified of the absorption, yeah, you're probably going to choose isolation. You don't want to be engulfed. And yet, what they most dread is what they most long for. It's a neurosis that's fantastically exquisite in its pain and torment. The feeling is that there's abundance there, over there, outside, emptiness in here. And yet, to participate in life without loss is impossible. So I guess the individual has to cling to their isolation, their separateness, because doing that, they cling to their identity. That's the only identity they have, even though they're longing for union. But even of this very longing, he's terrified because that will be the end of his self. He has to protect his self, needs love to live, and yet love will destroy it. Yeah. And so Lang says, he regards his own love and that of others as being as destructive as hatred. To be loved threatens his self. But his love is equally dangerous to anyone else. His isolation is not entirely for his self's sake. It's also a concern for others. I've heard this a million times. And people are more schizo-avoidant. They actually do care. Unless they're like, yeah, I got into a relationship, but I'm going to cut it off because he's getting feelings and I won't be able to give them what they want. Thank God if you know yourself that well, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people, I know avoidants that have purposely scared away lovers and dates, and because they're like, no, inside I just won't be able to give you, and they'll feel awful. You'll see the emptiness inside, and I just can't give you what you need. And they've described this as when they turn away a woman's love. Being divided against self, which is what I started this on, is to be against life, is to be against love. And so these people actually describe like it's almost like cutting them out the throat, and it's like they're fighting their own souls. Boy, so many good examples. But Kierkegaard was famous, that kind of nerdy philosopher guy, and but he fell in love with Regina, his girl, and he purposely made her kind of hate him a little bit. And why did he do it? No one knows. No, but I know. I mean, he was kind of this avoidant person. He thought like, no, I will ruin her. And he would say things like that all too. And it pained her because he loved her. And even as grave, I mean, she got married a couple of years later, but even as grave, he put like, oh, Regina, I'll see you in heaven or something like that. And, but he never kind of, but he knew he would never get with her in this life, so it's that phrase, I love you, but I'm choosing darkness. I love you, but that love, it can't happen. It's just too dreadful. You'll get hurt. I'll hurt you and I'll feel terrible. So they choose the isolation, the darkness. And that can even turn to hatred of women. I've seen that a lot of times. These guys that kind of just like are very not domestic abuse. I mean, that's obviously, but just attitudes towards women and this hatred. And that's because that's the thing I need most. That's the thing that has so much power. That thing could save me, just a touch. Oh, and they don't, and I deserve it. It's like I have narcissism. But there's also just that, like, I'm trapped in myself. I've been trapped in myself for years and years and years. It's possible that if I can get out, I can experience love and life, and I can be saved and be a real human being. But maybe not, And there's the woman who represents that salvation, that everything. And he looks around, everyone else seems to get a woman. Boy, why not him or her? And that what are you going to do? What are you going to do when someone has that much power over you and you can't have it? You can reach out, and right before you touch, your hands go numb. Hate that thing. What else are you going to do? Worship it or hate it? Worship it, they become anxiously, put everything on a pedestal. That guy, he's the most amazing man. This girl, no, she's the one. She's perfect in every way, understands me, pedestal. Or protect yourself by hating it, because indeed it is a threat. So, and Lang actually says this interesting. He says, what he may then do is destroy in his mind the image of anyone or anything he may be in danger of becoming fond of. Have the desire to safeguard that other person or thing in reality from being destroyed. Because, he says, if there's nothing to want, if there's nothing to envy, if there's nothing to love, well, that means there's nothing that will destroy him, nothing that'll reduce him to nothingness. And so Lang actually puts it like this: in the last resort, he sets about murdering his self. And this is not as easy as cutting one's throat. He descends into a vortex of non-being in order to avoid being, and also to preserve being from himself. They're going to have a very light identity, because having identity requires the existence of another by whom the identity is confirmed. And your identity is reflected in. And that's something an avoidant avoids at all costs. That's the last thing they want. So they're really kind of like a hopeless, damned situation, Yeah. But I will say, though, the avoidant in terms of getting help usually starts out very, very slow, and I do the ideal parent figure protocol. The avoidant is actually the person most likely to get better. If they stick with it. That's a big caveat, because avoidance will come. They'll do this for like 2 months, 3 months with me. Won't see anything huge. With avoidance, usually it's like that once we start really doing the work, they do well, but it takes a long time to get that rapport to avoidant, for the avoidant to even learn they're supposed to speak up. They're supposed to do their emotions. If you try to talk to these people and you ask them a question, you'll get like 2-word answers. That's not going to work. You really have to tell me what's going on. That attunement is so difficult. But if they stick with it, the avoidance can actually heal a lot quicker than anxious or disorganized. So there's absolutely hope. Even all the people I quote, Kafka, Kafka got a girl at the end. He screwed it up twice, but he did get one. He experienced what love was. Actually, I have a friend who he told me he believed in God, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Well, what made you?" And he goes, "Well, after reading Kafka's biography, because Kafka is so screwed up, so messed up, fearful, disorganized. I mean, he'd write to his girl, and then if she didn't write back the next day, he'd flip out. And where were you? And then I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to deal with that. So he's engaged twice completely messed it up. Terrified of women, terrified of intimacy. But towards the end, he found she's like 22, 23. He was, I don't know, his late 30s. And indeed, he did find love from all that. So it's not hopeless. I think of that last painting of Munch with the sun shining bright after all those years of darkness, all those years being turned inward. You look up and there's the sun. He had no idea it was there the whole time. It's like the stars are always there, but something's blocking it, something big, the sun. Something's blocking us seeing other people. It's this wounded part. It's this thing that's gunking up the works. It is so threatening that it's huge, and that's all we can see. But there are stars. And you can learn to perceive them. If you guys have any questions about this or any requests, just leave a comment, and I appreciate it. It's Jonathan McCormack. Thanks.